In today's video, I want to talk about everything that you need to know about DNS records for managing websites and domains. This is going to be a purely practical look at DNS records. So whether you are a web designer or IT person or anyone who has anything to do with managing a website or domains, this video is for you. Since it's a purely practical approach, I don't want to talk about any of the technical minutiae or details about that. I just want to talk specifically about what you need to know, the important things about managing DNS records so you can better manage your domains and your websites. I ran a web design agency for many years, and in that time I built and launched over 200 websites for my clients. Now, with each of those 200 websites means 200 different domains with 200 different configurations. And so I've seen most anything that you could expect to see when it comes to DNS record configurations. And so today I want to help you navigate DNS records, knowing everything that you need to know from a practical standpoint so you can better manage your websites and your clients' websites. Oh, before I forget, there is a really informative companion piece article to this video that you should check out. Link I'm sharing here and also in the description. It's at offsprout.com/blog. It's an article all about everything you need to know about DNS records. So check that out also. So today, what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to be talking about name servers, which are the records that control everything. We're also going to be talking specifically about different types of DNS records, from the records that affect your website to email-related records and all the other important ones in between. We're going to talk about what records you need to know about, what their most common settings are, so you can have an idea of if someone's telling you their email is set up with Gmail or Google Suite or Office 365, you'll know what the typical setup is for those. We're also going to be talking about big issues that you may run into and how you can avoid them. So like, for example, how you can avoid taking down someone's email or their website. Yeah, I want to help you avoid all of that. We're going to talk about different DNS providers as well as different tools to help you manage all of this. Some that you may not be familiar with, but there are a bunch of free tools that can really help you and make your life a lot easier. And we're going to cover that all coming up shortly. So starting out, what is DNS? What are DNS records? Well, put simply, for every website domain you own, there are different DNS records that help people navigate knowing where a website is, knowing where the email is hosted. Basically everything related to that domain that information is contained in the DNS records, and it basically points people in the right direction. Put simply. DNS records point emails to the right email servers. It points people looking for the website for the domain to the right web servers, and so on. There are different categories of DNS records, and we're going to touch upon the important ones here, but they range from mail records to website records to other records, informational records, and we're going to touch on kind of all the important ones coming up shortly. Typically, there are a few components to each record, and now I just want to show you real quick just an example of a DNS record, and this is using one of my favorite tools. It is called mxtoolbox.com. It is a lookup tool that helps you find different DNS records related to a domain. So if I didn't know, for example, what my or a client's mail records were, I could look them up, and this way I can ensure that if I'm bringing a site live of theirs, I know what their records are, and in case I don't want to change anything or lose anything, I can make sure to note all of this. So the first record that I want to talk about today is the NS record, which is short for nameserver. When you're thinking about DNS records, it all starts with the nameserver record because this is where all your DNS records will live. The nameserver is where DNS records are all stored. If you want to change any specific entries like your website related records or your email server related records, you have to do it at the website where your name servers are pointing to and where you have an account there. So for example, typically, if you buy a domain, wherever you buy the domain, they will usually host the name servers at their website for you. And you can keep it there, you can keep your name servers there. So like if you buy a domain with GoDaddy, you will typically see that your name servers are pointing to GoDaddy, and in your GoDaddy admin console, you'll be able to change your different DNS records, your website records, your mail records, and all of that. But if you don't want GoDaddy or whoever you registered your domain with hosting your name server records, you can change those. And there are typically the name server records are 2 lines. It's like usually ns1 or ns2 dot your website, that's the name server .com. Typically, like for example, GoDaddy's common setup is name ns something dot domain control.com. Name server records for Cloudflare, which is my preferred DNS provider, is like a name.ns.cloudflare.com. There are a bunch of different ones. There are always a minimum of 2 name server records. Sometimes, rarely, there are more than 2 name server records. Rarely, I don't think I've ever seen actually less than 2 name server records. So typically you'll see 2 name server records and it'll look something like what I've shown you on the screen here. By the way, just a quick shout out to this tool, mxtoolbox.com. If you are ever trying to look up different domain related records for your domain, if you don't know, for example, where your name servers are pointing to or what your email related records are or website related records are, you can look them up using this tool. It's so helpful. I have this bookmarked. I use this constantly. And if you are managing 1 or 1,000 websites, I recommend checking this out. So if you've never touched your name server records, chances are it's wherever you registered your domain originally from. And so you can log in where you registered your website and you can change your name servers there if you want to change them to something else. Now let's talk about A records. A records are basically simply related to your website. You have your website name, and then you have your IP address associated with that. So when someone types in google.com, for example, the internet is looking up the A record for that domain, for google.com. It's seeing that the associated IP address where the web server is for that is what you see below, starting with 172 dot so on. But thankfully, and so we don't have to type into the internet that IP address, we just type in google.com and the internet looks up the A record and sends us to that particular corresponding IP address. Awesome. Now the 2 fields that you'll see when looking at A records, you have your domain and your IP address. Commonly when you are having a website and you have just a simple site, your domain A record will be like the @ symbol, and that just means that it's your root domain. When you're managing your DNS and editing your records, you can actually have multiple different A records, but you can only have an A record related to one IP address for your domain. So you're going to have, so like in this example, the A record for google.com is this IP address below. But you can also have different IP addresses associated with websites that are subdomains of this. So like if you have, like, as a good example, docs.google.com, there can be a different IP address for that. So when someone goes to Google Docs, they can go to potentially a different IP address, or they'll go to the same one and they can just get routed to a different web page. But you could conceivably have different web hosts hosting different websites related to different subdomains on your site if you wanted to. And with your DNS records and editing them, you can send people to different locations for that. There are two fields with your A records. You have your name, and then you have the IP address. The name is either your root level domain, which is usually signified by an @ symbol. If it's just your plain domain, it could be any subdomain, whatever you want. Like in our example here, docs for Google, it would be docs would be the name, and then the corresponding IP address where our web server is located. Now, the IP address field will point to wherever your website hosting servers are, and they can be anywhere. You can have website servers on like WP Engine or GoDaddy or Squarespace, wherever you want, and they don't even have to be related to where your domain is registered or where your DNS records live. It can be completely separate. It doesn't matter, but you have to have a website hosting set up somewhere else that you're going to be pointing the IP address to related to your domain. One important thing is if you are just launching a website, you need to, at the website level, launch the website first. So like take it out of staging and bring it to this live stage before you change your A record. So if I'm launching a website and I want to do it simply where I just want to change the A record from whatever it's currently pointing to, whether it's an under construction page or an old website, and I want to change the IP address to my new site that is built on a different web server, I'm going to wait until I launch the website on the web server end. Then once that's launched, then I'll change the A record for the main website, and I'll change the IP address to wherever my web server is. This is very important because if you just set your IP address as some host like WP Engine, for example, if your site isn't live and set up as launched on that server, then people are just going to end up getting to a 404 page because your hosting provider, whether it's WP Engine or whoever else, they're not going to know that people coming to this domain for coming to this IP address for this domain, they're not going to know where to send people because they don't have a website with that name that's launched anywhere on their directory. It's just not how it's set up. So make sure you launch your website first at your web host level, wherever it is, before you change the A record and change that IP address to wherever your hosting is. That's an important tip to remember. Next, I want to talk about MX records. MX records stands for mail exchange. It's related to email. So MX records are related to your email hosting provider. And for your email hosting, you'll typically see that you have anywhere from 2 to potentially 5 MX records in your DNS for managing your email and pointing people to where your email server is. If you're using services like Gmail or Office 365 or Zoho for hosting your email, you're going to be using basically the same MX records as everyone else at those services. So most people who have their email hosted with G Suite all have the same MX records. People who are using Zoho for their email hosting have the same records, and people who are using Exchange typically have similar MX records, although they can have unique configurations. So with your different MX records, there are a few different fields to be mindful of. There's the name field, there's mail server, there's priority, and there's TTL. The name is typically just your website domain. Your mail server, this will be different for each particular entry that you have. For Zoho, as an example, you're going to have 3 entries. It's going to be mx.zoho.com, mx2.zoho.com, and mx3.zoho.com. Entries for things like G Suite there are usually 5 of them, like alt1.l.aspmx.google.com. doesn't matter. The thing is, with all of these, you can look up the MX records pretty easily. If you just go and search for G Suite MX records, you will find that entire list. After mail server, there's priority. This number can range from 0 to 66,000 or something like that. But typically I've seen mostly you have priority of 1, 10, 20, or 50. Occasionally you'll see a priority level of 0. I think that's typically I've seen that with Exchange. And then there's TTL, which stands for time to live. Usually I just set that as automatic and it's fine. Next, let's talk about CNAME records. So CNAME records basically are what we use related to redirect. So you'll have a name and a destination. Those are the two fields for CNAMEs. Now, typically I'll set up a CNAME for www and point that to the @ symbol, which is for the root domain. So if someone wants to go to www.mysite.com, they'll get redirected to my main website because I don't want there to be a separate or any confusion between the www and non-www version of the site. You may also see that if you are setting up email with like Exchange, for example, you're going to end up adding a bunch of CNAME records for things like mail, your domain, and that's going to be directed to a particular place, mobile, SIP, and a couple other CNAME records for these particular names pointing to places related to your domain. That's pretty common for Exchange email in particular. And that's really CNAMEs in a nutshell. CNAMEs are redirects and tell people where to go related to a domain or particular subdomains that you have. Oh, lastly, one also useful common record to have as a CNAME is an asterisk symbol, which is a catch-all. So if someone goes to 12345.yourwebsite.com, whatever, you can get them redirected to the main page of your website, and that for that value you would just set it as the @ symbol. Last tip is I keep saying the @ symbol, which is signifies the root domain. Some DNS providers, for whatever reason, don't recognize the @ symbol, and you just have to type out your root domain, your website.com, whatever it is. The last record type that I want to talk about real quick is the TXT record type. Now, TXT records are used for a wide range of things. They have a very wide range of functions, but they typically just associate arbitrary text with your domain. They're used for things ranging from like verifying your domain with Google that you own your domain or any other third-party service. TXT records can be used for related to verifying your domain with an email automation service to help deliverability. So it can be a wide range. There are two fields for TXT records. There's name and content. The name can be anything related to your domain. It can be blank, it could just be your domain. And then there is content, and the content varies widely. It can be something like MS verify, Google verify, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a bunch of string of numbers, whatever. Or if it's for email authentication and verification, it could be something like V equals SPF include : domain, something like that. And that's TXT records in a nutshell. Next up, I want to talk about some pitfalls to avoid and some recommendations I have on tools. So for pitfalls to avoid, first, when you're launching your website with a new DNS, make sure that you have all your existing websites' DNS records set up in that new DNS provider. So if you are going to change your name servers to have them point to your particular service of choice, like if your client had name servers in GoDaddy and you want to be managing the client's name server records in your Cloudflare account, as an example, you can do that. But first you need to ensure that your client's domain is in your DNS and set up and has all of their existing entries there, so that when you change the name server records on their end to point to your name server, that they don't lose anything. Because if you point someone's name servers to you or anywhere else, that destination has to already have the DNS record set up. Otherwise, your client is going to lose everything, because when you change the name servers to your provider, and people are going to try and email your client, if you don't have those MX records set up in your DNS provider, then the emails are going to get bounced. When people go to the website, they're going to see a 404 or does not exist, and your client is going to be freaking out. One pro tip, I love Cloudflare. So if you are going to manage your DNS and DNS for your clients, if you have a bunch of them, I recommend having everything together in the ecosystem within Cloudflare. It is free for particular uses. They have a free tier if you're just doing simple DNS management, which for this case we are, and that's all you need. You can have an account with all of your domains, all of your client domains. Just make sure that those domains are pointing to your Cloudflare DNS. And then you can manage everything in Cloudflare. One nice thing about Cloudflare is once you add a new domain to Cloudflare, Cloudflare will automatically suck from the internet all the DNS records of that website and populate them in the Cloudflare account. So if I were to add google.com or whatever into my Cloudflare account, Cloudflare will suck out from the internet every DNS record for Google and throw it into that Cloudflare account. And then once I were to change Google's name servers, why not, and point to my Cloudflare account, then everything would be set up and I won't lose anything. If you're not using Cloudflare, the best thing you can do, and it's not foolproof, is using MX Toolbox to look up different DNS records. Now with MX Toolbox, you can look up different name server records, you can look up A records, you can look up MX records and see where all of that is, but you can't get everything. So if you can't get, for example, different CNAME records without knowing exactly what the CNAME records are, you can't get, and things like that. And so that ends up being a pain. And so if you're trying to change the name servers from wherever they're existing to another name server, I recommend having an account with Cloudflare and doing it because it's free and just so much easier. So if I were in Cloudflare and I were just to add in a domain of productize.com, I see I'll get all of the records automatically pulled up into Cloudflare, and then I would change the name servers to point to my Cloudflare account. In this case, they are something.ns.cloudflare.com. There are two of them, and that's how that would be set up. If you are launching a website and all you want to do is launch a website and you want to keep it incredibly simple, all you have to do is change the A record to point to the new site. And nothing will be lost. If you just change an A record, you're not going to lose email. Just the website is going to point from the old IP address to the new IP address. Just make sure, though, that you first launch the website, as I was mentioning before, on the web server end so that it points to the right place when the IP address changes. Last thing I want to do is talk about my workflow for launching a new website for a client. It can be for a client, it could be for yourself. You could be launching your own brand new website and want to make sure that everything goes off without a hitch and there are no problems or interruptions. This is for you. So there are two real ways that you can do this. You can either do the name server change like I've mentioned before, or you can just do the A record change. So I'm going to walk you through each of them now. So if I'm going to do the name server method where let's say my client has, or I have my name servers and my domain all in GoDaddy, but I want to manage them all in Cloudflare. The first thing I would do is I would log into my Cloudflare account. I will add the domain that I want to have in Cloudflare, then automatically all of the related name server records are going to be populated into my Cloudflare account, from the CNAMEs to the A records, the MX, TXT, and so on. Great, now I have that all in Cloudflare. Next, what I'm going to do, I am going to want to launch the website. I'll go into my web server or my hosting account, wherever my website is. I'll take it from staging to live, and now the website is launched, but no one can see it because the A records are not pointing to it. Then what I'll do, I'll go back to my Cloudflare account where I want my name servers to eventually point, and then I'll change the A record and have that A record point to the IP address of my website server, wherever that is. And so if it's like WP Engine, I'll have it point to my WP Engine IP address. If it's HostGator or GoDaddy, I'll have it point to that. It's all fine. Then the last step that I'll do is I will change the name servers. I'll need my client's access to this, or if it's my domain, I'll just log into my GoDaddy account. If you have clients who kind of might be reluctant to give you their username and password for their GoDaddy account, as an example, they have what's called delegate access. And so they can give you access to a specific domain if they want to. And that can be great because they can give you access to their one domain. You can then go in and change the name servers from GoDaddy's domain control name servers and then point them to your specific Cloudflare name servers. And then once you do that, wait a few minutes, a couple of hours, could be up to a day sometimes, and then you will see a magical change where the name servers and everything is going to be pointing to your specific Cloudflare account and your DNS, including the A record, and now your new website is live. Victory! And that's all great. That's method one. But if you want to keep it incredibly simple, and just to keep it a two-step process for launching a website, you launch the website on the web server end, launch your website, take it out of staging and production and make it live. Great. Then you get access to your client's DNS, wherever that is. If it's GoDaddy, you can get delegate access, or wherever else, just ask them for their credentials and get that, and then log in, and then change the A record to your web host, and then wait, and wait, and then the website is live. And that's all that there is to it. As a best practice, I like to launch a website typically at the end of the day, at night, or on the weekend, kind of when it's a less risky time from a business perspective to be launching a website and potentially having issues. Not that if you follow all these steps, you shouldn't have any issues, but just in case, I want to make sure that there's nothing going wrong or nothing that we overlooked. So especially with like sites where they're very financially important, like an e-commerce site, I'll try and launch those websites overnight, like 10 p.m. local time, just as an example. No matter what, when I'm launching a website, I need to coordinate this with the client, make sure that they know that we're launching the website and get them confirmation that they know that this is happening. And once the site is live, I get them to confirm that they can see it live and that it works for them, and let them know, hey, the website's live, check it out, let me know what you think. Sometimes though, if you launch a website, you may see it live before or after your client does. This is just because of caching and propagation. It can take a while for the website related changes to hit back to the servers that you're pinging, and you just don't end up seeing them as soon as other people do. So it can take, so like for example, I've had situations where I can see a website is live, but it would take the clients a couple more hours, up to a day, sometimes longer, for them to actually see the website is live. And this has been a real, purely practical look at everything you need to know about DNS records, from website records to mail records, tools you should use. Please check out mxtoolbox.com, bookmark it, and if you're looking for a better way to bring sites live and manage your DNS, I'd definitely recommend Cloudflare as a product. Their free tier is great, there's nothing to lose. I'd give that a try as well. Lastly, if you haven't yet, please like this video, subscribe to our channel. We have a lot of other great videos related to web design, marketing, link building, and everything kind of in between. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to comment below or message us. You can find us online at offsprout.com. Thanks.